Before we begin, a critical disclaimer. The information presented in this video is for educational and informational purposes only. It is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or another qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition or treatment. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have seen in this presentation. What if I told you that the single greatest revolution in weight loss since the invention of the treadmill is happening right now inside a tiny injectable pen? A revolution so powerful it's not just changing waistlines, it's changing our culture, our economy, and even our very understanding of what it means to have willpower. This isn't science fiction. This is the reality of America's weight loss shot phenomenon. You've heard the names whispered at parties, shouted on TikTok, and plastered across magazine covers. Ozempic, Wegovy, Mounjaro. They've become Hollywood's worst-kept secret and Main Street's most coveted prescription. But what are they, really? How did a medication designed for type 2 diabetes become the most disruptive force in the multi-billion-dollar wellness industry? And most importantly, what does this mean for you, for your health, and for the future of obesity in America? Over the course of this deep dive, we are going to cut through the noise. We're going to bypass the celebrity gossip and the pharmaceutical marketing to give you the unfiltered truth. We will answer the questions that everyone is asking, but few are answering with real clarity. How do these shots actually work on a biological level? We'll break down the science so simply, you'll be able to explain it at your next family dinner. Are they the miracle cure they're being sold as? Or is there a dark side the commercials aren't showing you? We'll explore the life-changing benefits and the serious underreported risks. And finally, we will tackle the biggest question of all. Is this the beginning of the end of the obesity epidemic in America? Or are we sprinting headfirst into a massive, unforeseen public health crisis? By the end of this journey, you will have a complete 360-degree view of this phenomenon, empowering you to understand not just the science, but the societal earthquake happening right under our feet. To truly grasp the magnitude of this moment, we have to rewind. We have to remember what life was like before these shots existed. For decades, the American approach to weight loss has been a brutal, repeating cycle. A story of shame, struggle, and an industry that profits from failure. Think about it. The low-fat craze of the 90s, followed by the Atkins revolution of the 2000s. Then came paleo, keto, intermittent fasting, each one hailed as the answer, the final solution. We bought the gym memberships in January, filled with resolutions, only to see them gather dust by March. We counted every calorie, every carb, every point, turning food, one of life's great pleasures, into a source of anxiety and guilt. The narrative we were sold was brutally simple. It was a matter of personal responsibility, a battle of willpower. If you couldn't lose the weight, it was a moral failing. You were lazy. You lacked discipline. Meanwhile, a $70 billion-year diet industry churned out new books, new meal plans, and new miracle supplements, all built on the same quiet premise. That you would try, you would fail, and you would come back to buy the next new thing. It was a game rigged against us. Because what that narrative conveniently ignored was the complex reality of biology. It ignored genetics, hormones, and the powerful primal signals our brains send that have been honed by millennia of evolution to prevent starvation, not to achieve a beach body. For millions of Americans, it felt like being in a fight with their own body, a fight they were destined to lose. And then, from a completely unexpected corner of the medical world, came the game changer. The story of these drugs doesn't start in a weight loss clinic. It starts in a diabetes research lab. Scientists were studying a class of medications to help patients with type 2 diabetes control their blood sugar. The primary goal was insulin regulation. But as they conducted clinical trials, they started noticing a consistent, remarkable side effect. The patients were losing weight. A lot of weight. Not just a few pounds, but 15, 20, even 25% of their body weight. This wasn't the kind of incremental, agonizingly slow progress people were used to. This was different. This was transformative. So what is the magic inside these pens? The science sounds complex, but the concept is beautifully simple. It all comes down to a hormone your own body produces called GLP-1, which stands for glucagon-like peptide 1. Think of GLP-1 as your body's natural, I'm satisfied signal. After you eat a meal, your gut releases GLP-1, which travels to your brain and essentially sends a text message saying, hey, we're good down here. You can stop eating now. It also signals your stomach to slow down, making you feel physically fuller for a longer period of time. The problem is, your natural GLP-1 is like a Snapchat message. It appears, delivers its signal, and then vanishes in a matter of minutes. These new drugs, known as GLP-1 agonists, are like a supercharged, long-lasting version of that hormone. They mimic GLP-1, but they are designed to stick around not for minutes but for days. So when you take the shot, you are essentially sending a continuous, powerful, I'm full signal to your brain 24/7. The result is profound. It's not just that you feel less hungry, it's that the entire mental landscape around food begins to change. Users describe it as the silencing of food noise. That constant, chattering monologue in the back of your head. What should I eat for lunch? Did I eat too much for breakfast? I shouldn't have that cookie. Maybe just one more bite. For people who have lived with this their entire lives, the sudden quiet is nothing short of a revelation. The cravings diminish. The obsession fades. Food is no longer the enemy or the main character of their day. It's just fuel. For the first time, millions of people feel like they have a fair fight. They feel like their biology is finally working with them, not against them. This incredible power to rewrite one of our most fundamental human drives is why these drugs have exploded into a cultural and medical phenomenon unlike any we've ever seen. But this power also comes with a price and a universe of unanswered questions. The story of how this humble diabetes drug became a $100 billion gold rush is filled with unexpected twists, corporate battles, and deep ethical dilemmas that we are only now beginning to confront. We've seen the miracle of how it works, but what happens to your body when you stop? And what are the true long-term consequences of chemically rewiring your body's relationship with food? The answers are far more complicated and far more concerning than you might think. To understand what happens when you stop, you first have to understand the profound biological shift that occurred while you were on the drug. These medications, GLP-1 agonists, are master manipulators. They don't just curb your appetite. They conduct a symphony of hormonal changes. They tell your pancreas to release insulin, they signal to your liver to produce less sugar, but most importantly, they send a powerful message directly to your brain's control center, the hypothalamus, telling it you're full. The constant nagging food noise that so many people with obesity describe, that internal monologue about what to eat next, the cravings, the obsession, it goes silent. For the first time, many users feel normal. They feel free. But this freedom comes at a price. Your body, ever the survival machine, adapts. It gets used to this new, artificially high level of GLP-1. Your brain's receptors become accustomed to this constant, I'm full signal. It's a new equilibrium, a chemically induced state of satiety. The problem is, it's not your body's natural state. It's a state maintained by a weekly injection. So what happens when that injection stops? The music stops. The conductor leaves the stage. The artificial flood of GLP-1 vanishes, and the body is thrown into chaos. The receptors in your brain, now accustomed to a massive hormonal signal, are suddenly getting nothing. The result is a rebound effect of staggering intensity. The hunger doesn't just return. It comes back with a vengeance, like a starving animal finally uncaged. The food noise that was silenced comes roaring back, louder than ever before. It's a physiological whiplash. One study, a landmark trial for semaglutide, the active ingredient in Ozempic and Wegovy, laid this out in stark, undeniable numbers. After 68 weeks on the drug, participants had lost, on average, nearly 18% of their body weight. A phenomenal success. But the researchers didn't stop there. They then followed those same people for another year after they stopped the medication. The results were devastating. Within 1 year of stopping the weekly injections, the participants had regained, on average, 2/3 of the weight they had so painstakingly lost. Their waist circumference, their blood pressure, their blood sugar levels, all the incredible health markers they had improved, snapped right back toward where they started. This isn't a personal failing. It's not a lack of willpower. It is predictable biology. The drug doesn't cure the underlying metabolic condition of obesity. It merely suppresses its symptoms. Taking it away is like taking away insulin from a diabetic or blood pressure medication from someone with hypertension. The underlying condition immediately reasserts itself. This is the single most misunderstood aspect of these drugs. They are not a 12-week course of antibiotics that cures an infection. For the vast majority of users, to maintain the weight loss, they must be taken for life. This reality creates a golden cage. Imagine losing 50, 80, even over 100 pounds. You've bought a new wardrobe. You can play with your kids without getting winded. Your doctor is thrilled. You feel like you've been given a new life. But in the back of your mind, there's a constant low-grade hum of anxiety. It's the knowledge that this new life is entirely dependent on a weekly shot. A shot that could be taken away at any moment by a change in insurance coverage, a supply shortage, or the emergence of a side effect you can no longer tolerate. Let's talk about those side effects because they are the first major reason people are forced to stop. The common ones are well known: nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, constipation. For many, these are mild and fade over time. But for a significant minority, they are debilitating. We're talking about a level of nausea so persistent it feels like a constant state of food poisoning. We're talking about sulfurous burps so foul they can clear a room. And in rarer, more frightening cases, we're seeing reports of gastroparesis or stomach paralysis. This is a condition where the drug slowing of digestion goes too far. The stomach essentially freezes, unable to empty itself properly. Food sits and rots, leading to agonizing pain, violent vomiting of undigested food from days earlier, and in some cases requiring hospitalization. Lawsuits are now piling up, alleging the drug manufacturers knew the risks of severe gastroparesis were greater than they disclosed. People are describing their lives being ruined, unable to eat, constantly in pain, tethered to a life of misery that is a far cry from the freedom they were promised. For them, stopping the drug isn't a choice. It's a desperate attempt to reclaim their basic quality of life. But in doing so, they are forced to watch the scale creep back up, watching their old body return, haunted by the feeling that they traded one prison for another. Then there is the second and perhaps more common reason people stop: the crushing financial cost. This isn't just a prescription, it's a mortgage payment. Without good insurance coverage, the list price for a 1-month supply of Wegovy or Mounjaro can run from $1,000 to over $1,300. That's over $15,000 a year every year for the rest of your life. Initially, many employer insurance plans, eager to promote a healthier workforce, were covering these drugs. But they drastically underestimated the demand. Millions of Americans rushed to get prescriptions, and insurers were suddenly hit with a tidal wave of bills amounting to billions of dollars. They panicked, and now we're seeing a massive pullback. Companies and state health plans across the country are dropping coverage or putting up huge barriers, like requiring patients to first fail on multiple other, cheaper weight loss drugs. People who have lost life-changing amounts of weight are suddenly receiving letters in the mail, informing them that as of next month, their $25 copay is gone. The full cost is now on them. They are faced with an impossible choice. Do you drain your savings? Take out a second loan? Forgo retirement contributions to keep the weight off? Or do you stop and accept the inevitable rebound? This financial cliff is creating a new two-tiered system of weight management in America. The wealthy can afford to stay thin, paying out of pocket for as long as it takes. But the average person, the very person who is statistically more likely to suffer from obesity and its related health conditions, is being priced out of the single most effective treatment ever developed. They are given a temporary glimpse of a healthier life, only to have it snatched away, leaving them not just back where they started, but often with a profound sense of psychological failure and despair. The body remembers. It remembers the weight it was at, its so-called set point. And when the medication is withdrawn, it fights ferociously to get back there. But it's the mind that suffers the deeper wound. The experience of losing control all over again, of the food noise returning with a deafening roar, can be more traumatic than never having lost the weight in the first place. It reinforces a narrative of personal failure, even though the failure is not in the person, but in the promise of the drug itself, the unspoken, unmarketed promise that this was a cure, not just a temporary reprieve. But even for those who can afford it, who can tolerate the side effects, a more insidious question is beginning to surface. What does it mean to be on a powerful metabolism-altering drug, not for a year, not for 5 years, but for 30, 40, or 50 years? The long-term data simply doesn't exist. We are the experiment, and some of the early signals are deeply troubling, pointing towards risks that go far beyond an upset stomach. One of the most terrifying of these risks has a deceptively simple name: gastroparesis. It literally means stomach paralysis. Imagine eating a meal, a healthy small meal, and hours later it's still there. Not digesting, just sitting. The next day it's still there. You feel bloated, nauseous, and full, but you're starving for nutrients. Then you begin to vomit. Not yesterday's food, but food from 2, 3, even 4 days ago, undigested, looking almost exactly like it did when you ate it. This isn't a rare one-in-a-million horror story anymore. It's a reality detailed in lawsuits now being filed against the drug manufacturers. People who thought they were finally getting their health back are now tethered to a life of constant nausea, severe abdominal pain, and repeated hospitalizations for malnutrition and dehydration. Their stomachs have, for all intents and purposes, stopped working. How does this happen? Well, the very mechanism that makes these drugs so effective at weight loss is the culprit. Semaglutide and tirzepatide work by mimicking a hormone called GLP-1, which, among other things, tells your stomach to slow down its emptying process. This is a feature, not a bug. Slowing digestion makes you feel fuller for longer, so you eat less. For most people, this means food stays in the stomach for a few extra hours. But for an unknown and growing number of individuals, the drug doesn't just tap the brakes. It slams them to the floor and cuts the engine. The stomach's rhythmic contractions, the ones that churn and push food into the intestines, simply cease. And there is no easy fix. There is no switch to flip to turn the stomach back on. Some patients are now being told this condition could be permanent. But as devastating as gastroparesis is, it's just one piece of a much larger, more troubling puzzle. To see the next piece, you only need to look at the box the medicine comes in. There you'll find the FDA's most serious safety alert, what's known as a black box warning. A black box warning isn't a suggestion. It's the medical equivalent of a skull and crossbones on a bottle of poison. It's reserved for drugs with risks so significant, so potentially life-threatening, that the FDA mandates they be highlighted in this way to ensure no doctor or patient can possibly miss them. So what is the black box warning on Ozempic, Wegovy, and Mounjaro for? Thyroid C-cell tumors, including a rare but aggressive form of cancer called medullary thyroid carcinoma. This warning didn't come from nowhere. It came from the labs during the pre-approval studies on animals. In rodent studies, these GLP-1 drugs caused a dose-dependent and treatment duration-dependent increase in thyroid tumors. Let me translate that. The more drug the rats and mice got, and the longer they were on it, the more likely they were to develop thyroid cancer. The link was so undeniable that the FDA had no choice but to sound the loudest alarm they could. Now the immediate defense you'll hear is, well, humans aren't giant rats. And that's true. The drug companies and many doctors maintain that the specific mechanism that caused these tumors in rodents may not be relevant to humans. They point out that rodents have far more GLP-1 receptors on their thyroid C cells than humans do, making them uniquely susceptible. And so far, large-scale studies have not found a definitive, smoking gun link between these drugs and medullary thyroid cancer in the human population. But here's the terrifying catch. So far, these drugs have only been widely used for weight loss for a few years. Cancers, especially slow-growing ones, can take a decade or more to develop. We are in the middle of a global real-time experiment. The official prescribing information explicitly states that it is unknown whether Wegovy will cause thyroid C-cell tumors, including medullary thyroid carcinoma, MTC, in humans. It's unknown. And because of that uncertainty, anyone with a personal or family history of this type of cancer is warned to never, ever touch these drugs. But what about the millions of people who have no idea what their family history is, or who have an undiscovered genetic predisposition? They are rolling the dice, and we won't know the outcome for years to come. The potential dangers don't stop at the thyroid. Let's talk about the pancreas. This is the organ responsible for producing insulin, the very system these drugs are designed to manipulate. It's a delicate, vital organ, and when it gets inflamed, the condition is called pancreatitis. It's not just a stomach ache. Acute pancreatitis is an excruciatingly painful medical emergency that often requires hospitalization. Severe cases can lead to infection, organ failure, and death. And studies have shown a clear, statistically significant increased risk of acute pancreatitis for users of GLP-1 agonists. A 2018 analysis reviewing data from over 1.5 million patients found that use of these drugs was associated with a more than doubled risk of acute pancreatitis compared to other diabetes medications. The gut is a tightly interconnected system, and powerfully stimulating one part can have violent, downstream consequences for another. Then there's the gallbladder. Doctors have known for a long time that rapid weight loss by any method can increase the risk of developing gallstones and gallbladder disease. It has to do with changes in the composition of bile. But with these new drugs, there's a concern it might be more than just the speed of the weight loss. The same GLP-1 hormone that slows stomach emptying also appears to reduce gallbladder motility, meaning it doesn't contract as effectively to release bile. This stagnation can lead to the formation of painful gallstones, requiring surgery to remove the entire organ. The clinical trials for Wegovy noted that gallbladder-related disorders were reported more frequently among patients treated with the drug than with the placebo. So you might lose the weight, but you could also lose an entire organ in the process. Stomach paralysis, thyroid cancer, pancreatitis, gallbladder disease. These aren't minor side effects like the nausea and diarrhea you hear about on TV commercials. These are life-altering, potentially fatal conditions. And they all stem from the same root cause. We are taking a powerful systemic hormone and cranking its effects up to 11, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We are manipulating a fundamental messaging system in the human body, a system that has receptors not just in the gut but in the heart, the kidneys, and the brain. We are pulling a lever without a full understanding of all the machinery it's connected to. And while we're focused on these dramatic organ-level crises, we're missing something far more subtle, yet potentially just as damaging to our long-term health. It's happening to nearly everyone who takes these shots, but very few are talking about it. Because when the number on the scale goes down, we assume we're losing what we want to lose, fat. But what if a huge chunk of that weight, up to 40 or even 50% of it, wasn't fat at all? What if you are shedding pounds but in the process you are becoming catastrophically weak? What if you're losing the one thing your body needs to stay strong, mobile, and metabolically healthy as you age? I'm talking about muscle. The hidden cost of this miracle weight loss might be the very engine of your metabolism. Because when you lose weight on these drugs, you're not just losing fat. You are losing everything. And the data that's starting to trickle out is frankly terrifying. In a normal, healthy weight loss scenario, let's say through diet and exercise, a person can expect about 20 to 30% of the weight they lose to be lean mass. That's muscle, bone density, and connective tissue. The other 70 to 80% is fat. That ratio is considered a good, sustainable outcome. You're trimming the excess while preserving the vital machinery. But with GLP-1 agonists, that ratio gets thrown completely out of whack. A key study on semaglutide, the active ingredient in Ozempic and Wegovy, published in the New England Journal of Medicine, used advanced body composition scans. What did they find? They found that participants lost about 15 kilograms, or 33 pounds. Fantastic, right? But when they looked closer, they discovered that a shocking 40% of that lost weight was lean mass. Not 20%, not 30%, 40. That means for every 10 pounds you lose, 4 of them are the muscle that holds you upright, that burns calories even when you're asleep, that allows you to open a pickle jar or climb a flight of stairs. Think about what that actually means for your body. You're essentially trading a metabolically active engine for nothing. You're becoming a smaller but significantly weaker version of yourself. This is the birth of the skinny fat phenomenon on a national scale. It's a term that sounds like a playground insult, but it's a very real and dangerous medical state. You might fit into smaller jeans, the number on the scale might make you happy, but your body composition tells a different story. You have less muscle and a higher percentage of body fat than you did before, even at a lower weight. Your body mass index, or BMI, might say you're healthy, but your metabolic system is screaming for help. You look thin, but you have the internal health profile of someone who is obese and sedentary. This isn't just about looking toned. Muscle is your metabolic currency. It is the single most important organ for longevity. More muscle mass is linked to better insulin sensitivity, meaning your body is far better at managing blood sugar and warding off type 2 diabetes. It's linked to stronger bones, reducing your risk of osteoporosis and fractures as you age. It's your armor. It protects you during illness or injury, serving as a reservoir of amino acids your body can draw upon for repair. When you intentionally sacrifice this armor, you are making yourself fragile. And here's the cruelest part of this bargain. It sets you up for a catastrophic rebound. Your resting metabolic rate, the number of calories your body burns just to stay alive, is directly tied to how much muscle you have. For every pound of muscle you lose, your metabolic rate drops. So let's follow this through. You take the shot, you lose 40 pounds, but 16 of those pounds are precious muscle. Your metabolism has now slowed to a crawl. Then what happens when you stop taking the drug? Maybe it gets too expensive. Maybe the side effects become unbearable. Or maybe you've hit your goal weight and you think, I'm done. The problem is, your body isn't done. The intense appetite suppression vanishes. The food noise comes roaring back, often with a vengeance. But you're now trying to eat in a body with a crippled metabolism. The caloric intake that used to maintain your weight now causes you to gain weight rapidly. It's like trying to drive a V8 engine on the fuel budget of a tiny scooter. The system overloads. And the weight you regain? It doesn't come back as 60% fat and 40% muscle. Oh no. Your body is in panic mode. It prioritizes storing energy for the next perceived famine. Packs on fat. Almost all of the regained weight is pure adipose tissue, so you end up not just back where you started but in a far worse position. You weigh the same as you did before, but now you have even less muscle and even more fat. Your body composition has been decimated. You are metabolically broken. This isn't a fluke. It's a predictable physiological trap. It's a cycle that can leave people heavier and unhealthier than they ever were before they took their first injection. And we haven't even talked about the long-term consequences for aging. There is a medical term for age-related muscle loss: sarcopenia. It's a natural process that typically starts in your 30s and accelerates as you get older. It's the reason why the elderly become frail, why falls become so dangerous. Sarcopenia is what steals our independence. What these drugs appear to be doing is inducing a rapid, aggressive, drug-fueled sarcopenia in people who are in the prime of their lives. You might be 45, but you're giving your body the muscle profile of a 75-year-old. You are literally fast-forwarding your own aging process at the muscular level. Imagine yourself 20 years from now. Do you want to be able to travel, play with your grandkids, live with vitality? Or will you be struggling to get out of a chair because a decision you made in 2024 stripped your body of the strength it needed to carry you through life? This is the hidden cost that isn't written on the pharmacy label. It's the long-term mortgage you're taking out on your future health, all for the short-term benefit of a smaller number on a scale. The focus has been so intense on the pounds lost that we've forgotten to ask a much more important question. What exactly are we losing? The answer, it seems, is our strength, our metabolic health, and our future resilience. You're left lighter, yes, but also weaker, with a broken metabolism primed for rebound weight gain. But what if the physical changes are only half the story? What happens when the drug that quiets the food noise in your head starts to quiet everything else? What is the price you pay, not in your muscles but in your mind? The phenomenon is being called Ozempic personality, or semaglutide anhedonia. And it starts subtly. First, the silence is a gift. Imagine your brain is a crowded, noisy room, and for your entire adult life, one person has been screaming about food. Every decision, every social gathering, every moment of stress is punctuated by this relentless inner monologue about calories, cravings, and guilt. Then one day you take a shot and that person just leaves the room. The quiet is blissful. It's freedom. You're not just losing weight. You're gaining immense mental real estate. You can think clearly. You can focus on your work, your family, on anything other than the internal battle over a bagel. This is the miracle phase. People describe an almost euphoric sense of control. For the first time, they are the pilot of their own body, not a passenger being hijacked by cravings. They go out to dinner with friends and can actually listen to the conversation instead of obsessing over the breadbasket. They can walk through a grocery store and feel nothing. A profound and liberating neutrality towards the snack aisle that once held them captive. This isn't just about appetite suppression. It's about the silencing of a lifelong psychological burden. The food noise is gone, and in its place is peace. But then for some, the quiet starts to spread. The room doesn't just stay quiet. It starts to feel empty. The person who was screaming about food is gone, but it turns out they took a few other people with them when they left. The person who got a jolt of excitement from planning a vacation, they're a little quieter now. The one who felt a surge of joy hearing a favorite song come on the radio, their voice is a whisper. The one who looked forward to a glass of wine on a Friday night, or the thrill of a new project at work. They've packed their bags too. The quiet is no longer peaceful. It's hollow. This is anhedonia, the inability to feel pleasure. It's not sadness or depression in the traditional sense, though it can certainly lead to it. It's more like the world being drained of its color, turning from vibrant technicolor to a muted, washed-out grayscale. The things that used to light you up, that used to form the very texture of your joy, now register as flat, distant concepts. You know you should feel excited about your best friend's wedding, but the feeling itself is an echo. You know you used to love hiking on a crisp autumn day, but now it just feels like walking. So what is happening in the brain to cause this profound emotional shift? To understand it, we have to go back to the GLP-1 hormone these drugs mimic. We know it works on the pancreas and the gut, but that's not the whole story. Our brains are also studded with GLP-1 receptors, and they're located in some very important neighborhoods, specifically in the brain's reward system. Think of areas like the nucleus accumbens and the ventral tegmental area. This is the ancient, powerful circuitry that drives our motivation. It's the system that releases dopamine, the feel-good neurotransmitter, when we do something that our brain deems beneficial for survival, like eating high-calorie food, having sex, or forming social bonds. This system creates desire. It's the engine of our wanting. It's what gets you off the couch to seek out things that bring you pleasure and reward. These weight loss drugs, by activating the GLP-1 receptors in this very system, seem to turn down the master volume on this entire reward pathway. The initial target is the dopamine hit you get from food. By dampening that response, the Krispy Kreme donut is no longer a siren call. It's just a piece of fried dough. The drug effectively breaks the link between the food and the pleasure, which is revolutionary for weight loss. But the brain's reward system isn't a precision instrument. It's a blunt tool. It doesn't distinguish between the pleasure you get from a cheeseburger and the pleasure you get from laughing with a loved one, or the satisfaction you get from completing a difficult task. It's all part of the same general dopamine-driven circuit. So when you turn down the volume to mute the call of the cheeseburger, you risk muting everything else too. The drug isn't just quieting the food noise, it's quieting the entire symphony of human desire. This is why we're seeing a fascinating and complex array of anecdotal reports. People are spontaneously losing the desire to drink alcohol. A lifelong social drinker suddenly finds a glass of Chardonnay as appealing as a glass of water. Heavy smokers report losing their nicotine cravings overnight. Compulsive shoppers find themselves walking past their favorite stores without a second glance. People with gambling addictions report that the thrill is just gone. From a public health perspective, this is staggering. Scientists are now actively studying if these drugs could be a blockbuster treatment for addiction, potentially rewiring the brains of millions to break free from destructive behaviors. But what is a destructive behavior? And what is a life-affirming pleasure? The brain doesn't always know the difference. The same mechanism that might stop a person from drinking a bottle of wine a night might also stop them from enjoying a single celebratory glass. The same dampening effect that curbs a shopping addiction might also curb the excitement of buying a thoughtful gift for a partner. The stories shared online are haunting. A woman who loved live music, who planned her year-round concerts, now finds herself standing in a crowd feeling nothing, just observing the joy of others as if through a thick pane of glass. A man who was a passionate home cook, for whom food was a love language, now finds cooking a meaningless chore. He's losing weight, but he's also losing the very hobby that connected him to his family and his culture. The joy of discovery, the thrill of novelty, the simple, motivating pleasures that make life rich and meaningful. For some, these are the unintended casualties in the war against weight. This leads us to a deeply unsettling philosophical question, one that goes far beyond kilograms and calorie counts. Your personality, your identity, is in many ways a collection of your desires, your passions, and your pleasures. It is the sum of what you love, what you seek, and what makes you feel alive. Your drive to succeed, your passion for your hobbies, your desire for connection. These are all mediated by your brain's reward system. So if a medication fundamentally alters the function of that system, does it fundamentally alter you? Is the person who emerges at their goal weight, but who feels a muted sense of joy and a diminished drive, still the same person who started the journey? As we peel back the layers of the physical transformation, we are forced to confront a much more complicated one. The transformation of the self. Who are you when the wanting stops? It's a question that sounds like it belongs in a philosophy class, not a discussion about weight loss. But for millions of people, it's becoming their new unnerving reality. The food noise, that constant, nagging internal monologue about what to eat next, when to eat it, what you shouldn't have eaten, it's gone. For some, its absence is a blissful silence, a liberation. But for others, it leaves a profound, echoing void. Because for so many, food isn't just fuel. It's comfort. It's a reward after a hard day. It's the centerpiece of celebration and the crutch in times of sorrow. It's the way we connect with our families, our friends, our culture. When you take that away, what's left? Imagine being a passionate home baker, someone whose love language is a freshly baked loaf of bread or a perfectly frosted cupcake. You take the shot and suddenly, the smell of yeast and sugar no longer brings you joy. The act of creation feels hollow because you have no desire to taste the result. Your identity, so deeply intertwined with being the feeder, the baker, the host, begins to fracture. Or consider the man whose entire social life revolved around weekly wings and beer with his buddies. Now he sits there nursing a water, the smell of buffalo sauce making him vaguely nauseous. He's physically present, but he feels a universe away. The shared ritual that bonded them is broken, and he feels like a ghost at the table. This is the identity crisis of the GLP-1 era. People are discovering that their personalities were more entangled with food than they ever realized. Hobbies they thought they loved were, in fact, just vehicles for consumption. The desire to go to the movies was inseparable from the desire for a giant bucket of popcorn. The urge to travel was tied to the excitement of trying new cuisines. When the drug erases the wanting, the scaffolding of your social life and personal pleasures can begin to crumble. You have to actively rebuild a life, a personality, a system of rewards and comforts that has nothing to do with food. You have to get to know yourself all over again, but this time without the constant companion of appetite. And as this internal reinvention is happening, a startling external one is taking place too. It's a transformation that goes far beyond the number on the scale, and it's not always the one people bargain for. We're talking about a phenomenon that has been given a catchy, slightly cruel name: Ozempic face. It's the gaunt, hollowed-out look that can result from rapid, significant weight loss. The face loses its volume, its subcutaneous fat, much faster than the skin can retract. Cheeks sink, jowls can appear, and the skin can look lax and aged. It's a strange and frustrating paradox. You lose the weight that you believed made you look older or less healthy, only to look in the mirror and see a face that seems to have aged a decade in a matter of months. This isn't just about vanity. It's about the deep disconnect between the victory of weight loss and the reality of your new reflection. You've won the battle, but you're not sure you like the victor. This physical manifestation is a stark reminder that these drugs don't just magically melt away the bad parts of your body. They trigger a systemic process, and the body loses fat from everywhere, including the places that give your face its youthful structure. It's a trade-off many didn't know they were making, swapping one form of body dissatisfaction for another. But what's happening to the face is just a visible clue to a much more dangerous process that could be happening throughout the rest of the body. This is where the story turns from cosmetic concerns to critical health warnings. The weight you're losing isn't just fat. A substantial portion of it is something you absolutely cannot afford to lose: lean muscle mass. Studies are now revealing a concerning pattern. In a typical diet and exercise regimen, a person might lose about 75% fat and 25% muscle. But with some of these GLP-1 drugs, early data suggests that number can be much worse, with some studies indicating that lean mass could account for up to 40% of the total weight lost. Let me repeat that. Nearly half of the weight coming off could be functional, metabolically active muscle tissue. Why is this so terrifying? Because muscle is the engine of your metabolism. The more muscle you have, the more calories you burn at rest. When you lose a significant amount of it, your metabolic rate, your body's furnace, slows down dramatically. This makes it incredibly difficult to keep the weight off if you ever stop taking the drug. Your body has become a much more efficient fat-storing machine than it was before you even started. It's a phenomenon known as metabolic adaptation, and losing muscle mass pours gasoline on that fire. Furthermore, this isn't just about metabolism. This is about your strength, your stability, your ability to live a long, independent life. The medical term for age-related muscle loss is sarcopenia, a condition that leads to frailty, falls, and a host of health problems in the elderly. By shedding so much lean mass so quickly, people in their 30s, 40s, and 50s are essentially inducing a state of premature sarcopenia. They are sacrificing the very tissue that will protect them from injury and keep them mobile and strong as they age. They may be smaller, but they are becoming fundamentally weaker. This leads to the ultimate dangerous illusion of the weight loss shot phenomenon: the creation of the skinny fat individual. On the surface, things look great. The BMI is in the healthy range. The clothes fit better. The number on the scale is the lowest it's been in decades. But underneath, the story is completely different. Their body composition, the all-important ratio of fat to muscle, may actually be unhealthier than before. They have less muscle and a proportionally higher percentage of body fat, particularly visceral fat, the dangerous kind that wraps around your organs. They have, in effect, become smaller versions of their unhealthy selves. This is the silent side effect, the one you can't see on the scale or even in the mirror. It requires a deeper understanding of health, one that looks beyond weight and measures strength, vitality, and true body composition. The triumph of shedding pounds can mask the tragedy of shedding strength. It's a trade-off that is rarely discussed in the breathless headlines or celebrity endorsements. And it begs a crucial question. Are these drugs simply a tool, or are they a trap? A tool that, if used correctly with rigorous strength training and high-protein diets, can be effective? Or a trap that, for the average unguided user, promises a thinner life at the cost of a weaker future? And how did we get to a place where a diabetes medication became the center of this complex, high-stakes gamble for millions of Americans desperate for a solution? The answer, like the drug itself, is a complex compound of biology, desperation, and brilliant marketing. It starts not in a sterile lab, but in the sun-scorched deserts of the American Southwest, with a venomous lizard, the Gila monster. This creature, with its sluggish metabolism, can go for months without eating. In the 1990s, scientists studying its venom discovered a potent hormone called oxyndin-4. What was remarkable about this hormone was its similarity to a human hormone called GLP-1, or glucagon-like peptide 1. In our bodies, GLP-1 is a multitasker. When we eat, our intestines release it. It tells the pancreas to produce insulin, which lowers blood sugar. It tells the stomach to slow down, making us feel full longer. And it sends a signal directly to the brain's hunger center, essentially turning down the volume on our appetite. The problem is, our natural GLP-1 lasts for only a few minutes before it's broken down. It's a fleeting signal. But the Gila monster's version? It was incredibly durable. It could resist breakdown for hours. This was the eureka moment. Scientists realized they could create a synthetic version of the lizard's hormone to treat type 2 diabetes, providing a long-lasting way to control blood sugar. The first of these drugs, called Byetta, hit the market in 2005. And almost immediately, doctors and patients noticed something else. A powerful, consistent side effect. People were losing weight. They weren't just managing their diabetes. They were shedding pounds without the ravenous hunger that so often dooms diets to failure. The pharmaceutical industry, particularly a Danish company called Novo Nordisk, saw the monumental potential. This wasn't just a diabetes drug. This was a potential answer to obesity, one of the largest and most stubborn public health crises in the world. The race was on to engineer a better molecule. They needed something even more effective, more convenient, and more like the human hormone to reduce side effects. They tinkered, refined, and eventually created semaglutide. The masterstroke of semaglutide was its longevity. By binding the molecule to a fatty acid, they created a slow-release mechanism. It was so stable in the human body that it only needed to be injected once a week. This was a game-changer. For patients, it was the difference between a burdensome daily routine and a simple weekly action. With this powerful new tool in hand, Novo Nordisk launched one of the most significant clinical trial programs in the history of obesity medicine, known as the STEP trial's semaglutide treatment effect in people with obesity. The results, published in 2021, were nothing short of seismic. They weren't just good, they were revolutionary. For decades, weight loss drugs offered maybe 5% body weight loss, often with significant side effects. The STEP trial showed that participants taking semaglutide, combined with diet and exercise, lost an average of 15% of their body weight. Some lost over 20%. To put that in perspective, a 250-pound person could lose nearly 40 pounds. This wasn't just moving the needle. It was redrawing the entire map of what was considered medically possible for weight loss. For the first time, a medication was delivering results that started to approach the effectiveness of bariatric surgery, but without the invasive, life-altering procedure. The medical community was stunned. Obesity, long stigmatized as a failure of willpower, was now being framed by irrefutable data as a treatable chronic disease responsive to targeted hormonal intervention. The conversation began to shift from eat less, move more to your biology is working against you, and we have a tool that can help. But groundbreaking science alone doesn't create a cultural phenomenon. The drug's arrival coincided with a perfect storm of societal factors. We were emerging bleary-eyed from the haze of the COVID-19 pandemic. Lockdowns had led to the infamous Quarantine 15, leaving millions feeling heavier, less healthy, and more desperate for a change. Simultaneously, our lives had moved almost entirely online. Social media, especially the hypervisual, short-form video world of TikTok, had become the dominant cultural force. And that's where the whispers started. It began not with commercials but with speculation. A celebrity appears on a red carpet looking dramatically thinner. A tech billionaire credits a miracle drug for his transformation. The terms Ozempic and Wegovy started trending. Wegovy was the brand name for semaglutide specifically approved for weight loss. Ozempic was the exact same drug, just in a slightly different dose, approved for type 2 diabetes. Then came the supply chain issues. Demand for Wegovy exploded so fast that Novo Nordisk couldn't keep up. A massive shortage hit. But the genie was out of the bottle. People wanted the drug and they wanted it now. So a massive wave of off-label prescribing began. Doctors, seeing the clear evidence and fielding requests from patients, started prescribing the diabetes version, Ozempic, for weight loss. This created a vicious cycle. The demand for Ozempic from people seeking weight loss created shortages for the diabetes patients who actually needed it for its intended purpose. The media frenzy was instantaneous. It was the perfect headline. A Hollywood secret, a diabetes drug controversy, a supposed miracle cure for a problem affecting nearly half of the country. TikTok influencers began posting their Ozempic journeys, documenting their weekly injections, their shrinking waistlines, and their side effects, from nausea to the now infamous Ozempic face. The drug was no longer just a prescription, it was content. It was a status symbol. Being able to get it and afford it signaled access and wealth. It became a shorthand for a specific kind of effortless biohack transformation that seemed perfectly tailored for the Instagram age. This is how a diabetes drug, born from the venom of a desert lizard, became a household name and a billion-dollar cultural obsession. It wasn't one thing but everything at once. The decades of scientific research provided the powerful product. The desperation of a post-pandemic population provided the demand. And the frictionless, hyper-accelerated engine of social media provided the marketing campaign that billions of dollars in traditional advertising could never hope to match. It created a tidal wave of demand that has strained our healthcare system and fundamentally changed the conversation around weight, beauty, and health. But as this wave continues to swell, it's dragging some dark and complex questions to the surface. The price tag for these drugs is astronomical, often exceeding $1,000 a month without insurance. This has created a stark new line in society: the haves and the have-nots of weight loss. Those with the money or the right insurance plan can buy their way to a smaller size, while others are left behind watching a solution dangle just out of reach. What does it mean when a medication that could genuinely help millions with a chronic disease becomes a luxury good? And what are the ripple effects when an entire economy begins to warp around this new reality? The food industry, the diet industry, the fitness industry, they are all standing at the edge of a fundamental disruption. The very act of eating, of craving, of struggling with weight, is being medicalized and monetized on an unprecedented scale. We've moved beyond the individual user and into the realm of massive societal transformation. The question is no longer just about personal health, but about the health of our entire system. And when we talk about the system, we're talking about the economy, because this isn't just a ripple. It's an economic earthquake, reshaping entire industries with a force we haven't seen since the dawn of the internet. The epicenter of this quake is, of course, Big Pharma. For decades, they chased the Holy Grail, a safe, effective weight loss drug. Now, two companies, Novo Nordisk and Eli Lilly, have found it, and the rewards are staggering. Novo Nordisk, the maker of Ozempic and Wegovy, saw its market value soar so high that its valuation became larger than the entire GDP of its home country, Denmark. Think about that. A single company is worth more than the entire economic output of its nation. Eli Lilly, with Zepbound and Mounjaro, isn't far behind, becoming one of the most valuable healthcare companies on the planet. These aren't just successful drugs. They are nation-state level economic forces. But for every winner in an earthquake, there are countless structures that crumble. And the first to feel the tremors was the multi-billion-dollar diet industry. For a century, companies like Weight Watchers, Jenny Craig, and Nutrisystem built empires on counting points, prepackaged meals, and the psychology of group support. Their business model was predicated on the idea that weight loss was a matter of willpower and behavioral change. GLP-1 drugs didn't just challenge that model, they obliterated it. Why spend months meticulously tracking every calorie when a weekly shot can silence the food noise in your head and melt pounds away? Jenny Craig, an icon of the industry for 40 years, shut down its operations completely. Weight Watchers, in a desperate pivot to survive, acquired a telehealth company that prescribes these very drugs. The message was clear. If you can't beat them, buy them, and hope your old customers will pay you for access to the thing that made your original product obsolete. The disruption didn't stop there. It hit the operating rooms. Bariatric surgery, procedures like gastric bypasses and sleeves, was once considered the most effective long-term solution for severe obesity. It was a drastic, life-altering, but often life-saving intervention. Today, surgeons are reporting a dramatic drop-off in patient inquiries. Patients are canceling scheduled surgeries, opting to try the shots first. Why endure the risks, the recovery, and the permanent alteration of your anatomy when a less invasive option exists? The entire field of bariatric medicine is now facing an existential crisis, forced to redefine its role in a world where its primary tool is no longer the last resort. And then there's the biggest target of all, the food and beverage industry. For years, their growth was fueled by a simple formula: make food hyperpalatable, sell it in larger portions, and market it relentlessly. Their success was built on our cravings. But what happens when a drug systematically dismantles those cravings? What happens when millions of people no longer feel the urge to grab a candy bar at the checkout counter, or order the large fries or have a second beer? The early data is already sending shockwaves through boardrooms. Walmart executives noted that shoppers buying Ozempic were also buying slightly less food overall. Conagra, the parent company of brands like Slim Jim and Duncan Hines, is actively studying how the drugs will affect snacking habits. The CEO of Pringles has been asked by investors about the Ozempic effect, the very foundation of the modern food environment. An environment designed to make you want more is being eroded by a molecule that makes you want less. Even airlines are taking note. Analysts at Morgan Stanley calculated that if the average weight of an American passenger drops by just 10 pounds, U.S. airlines could save over $100 million a year in fuel costs. Every single industry that was built on or profited from the realities of a heavier population is now being forced to recalculate its future. This transformation extends far beyond balance sheets and stock prices. It's rewiring the very fabric of our social lives. Think about dating. For generations, weight has been a significant, if often unspoken, factor in attraction and selection. Suddenly, people who may have felt invisible or overlooked are undergoing dramatic physical transformations. Dating apps are being flooded with stories of people receiving a level of attention they have never before experienced. But this creates complex new dynamics. What happens in a long-term relationship when one partner loses 100 pounds and their entire sense of self, their confidence, and the way the world sees them changes overnight? The stability of that relationship, once built on a certain equilibrium, is now tested in fundamental ways. It's a deeply personal earthquake, happening in millions of homes. The workplace is another arena of profound change. Weight discrimination is one of the last socially acceptable biases. Overweight individuals are less likely to be hired, are paid less, and are less likely to be promoted than their thinner peers. It's a harsh reality. So, will these drugs act as a great equalizer? Will they erase this bias by allowing more people to conform to the unwritten corporate aesthetic? Or will they create a new, more insidious form of pressure? If a cure for being overweight is readily available, will the stigma against those who don't or can't take it become even more intense? Will employers start to see weight as a personal failing that an employee is simply choosing not to fix? The pressure to be productive, to be on, could soon be joined by a medicalized pressure to be thin. And this leads to one of the most contentious cultural questions of our time. Is this the end of body positivity? For over a decade, the body positivity and fat acceptance movements fought to decouple weight from worth. They championed the idea that all bodies are good bodies, that health exists at every size, and that the goal should be self-acceptance, not endless, punishing self-modification. They worked to dismantle the societal shame associated with being fat. Now, a simple injection offers a path away from that identity. Does the existence of Ozempic invalidate that struggle? Does choosing to take it represent an act of self-care and health empowerment? Or is it an unconscious surrender to the very societal pressures the body positivity movement fought against? The conversation has become incredibly fraught. For some, the drugs are a godsend, freeing them from a body that felt like a prison. For others, they represent a tragic step backward, a medicalization of a problem that they believe is cultural, not chemical. Beneath all these seismic shifts lies the deepest and most dangerous fault line of all: a new class divide. These drugs are not cheap. Without insurance, they can cost over $1,000 a month. And insurance coverage is a chaotic patchwork. Some plans cover it, some don't. Some require you to fail multiple other therapies first. Some will only cover it for diabetes, not for weight loss. The result is a grim new reality of metabolic privilege. The wealthy, the well-insured, and the well-connected can access this revolutionary technology. They can, in effect, buy their way into a body that society rewards with better health outcomes, higher social status, and greater economic opportunity. Meanwhile, those in lower socioeconomic brackets, the very populations that suffer from the highest rates of obesity and related diseases, often due to food deserts and lack of access to healthy options, are priced out. They are left behind, watching from the sidelines as a new tool for social and physical mobility is distributed based on one's ability to pay. We are creating a visible biological caste system, where the division between the haves and the have-nots is etched onto their very bodies. We aren't just changing who we are, we're changing who gets to change. This new world doesn't just reshape our bodies, it reshapes our social fabric. Imagine the subtle, unspoken tensions at the dinner table. The person who can effortlessly decline dessert not out of willpower, but because of a chemical indifference. The friend who orders the richest thing on the menu, knowing a weekly injection provides a safety net others can't afford. It introduces a new, invisible advantage. The conversation about health, discipline, and self-control becomes instantly complicated. Is the person who spent years meticulously counting calories and hours in the gym somehow less successful than the one who got a prescription? We've always, as a culture, lionized the grind, the hustle, the transformative power of sheer effort. The before and after photo wasn't just about weight. It was a testament to character, to dedication. Now, that narrative is being overwritten by a far simpler one. The before and after of a prescription. This creates a new kind of social resentment. A quiet judgment that asks, did you earn it? It's a question that cuts both ways. Those who lost weight through traditional means may feel their monumental effort has been devalued, made to look archaic and inefficient. And those on the medication may feel a need to hide it, to pretend their transformation was born of the same grit and sacrifice, for fear of being seen as taking a shortcut. The very definition of natural is being redrawn. Is a body sculpted by a GLP-1 agonist less real than a body sculpted by 1,000 hours on a treadmill? It's a philosophical debate playing out in real time in our gyms, our offices, and our own reflections in the mirror. We are entering an era of biohacking, where upgrading the self is no longer science fiction. But every upgrade comes with a user agreement, and the fine print on these drugs is only now coming into focus. And it's in that fine print that we find the unsettling paradoxes. One of the most talked about side effects isn't medical, it's aesthetic. It's a phenomenon now grimly known as Ozempic face. Doctors and patients alike began noticing that the rapid, significant weight loss was hollowing out faces, creating a gaunt, aged, and skeletal appearance. The fat pads that give the face its youthful volume were among the first to go, causing skin to sag and wrinkles to deepen almost overnight. People were getting the body they wanted, but it came at the cost of the face they recognized. It's a cruel twist of irony. In the quest to look younger and healthier, many ended up looking older and more frail. Suddenly, plastic surgeons and dermatologists were flooded with patients seeking fillers and facelifts, not to turn back the clock, but to counteract the effects of their own weight loss solution. It was the first clear sign that this miracle was not without its monkey's paw-style consequences. But the cosmetic concerns are just the surface. A far more dangerous issue lurks beneath the skin: muscle loss. When you lose weight rapidly, your body doesn't just burn fat, it also cannibalizes muscle tissue. This is a well-known problem with extreme calorie restriction, but with these drugs it can happen even when people feel they are eating reasonably. The result is a condition called sarcopenia, the age-related loss of muscle mass, strength, and function, except now it's happening to people in their 30s and 40s. You may be a smaller size, but you are metabolically less healthy. You are weaker. Your metabolism, the very engine that burns calories, is being downgraded. This is a critical, often overlooked danger. Losing 50 pounds sounds like a victory, but if 20 of those pounds are lean muscle, you've potentially set yourself up for long-term metabolic disaster. Your body becomes less efficient at managing blood sugar and burning fat, making you even more susceptible to weight regain the moment the drug is stopped. It's a vicious cycle masquerading as a cure. The scale shows a win, but your body's composition tells a story of defeat. And this leads to the most profound and perhaps most terrifying aspect of this entire phenomenon: the psychological chains. The knowledge that this new, slimmer you is entirely dependent on a continuous, expensive supply of a pharmaceutical product creates a unique kind of anxiety. It's a gilded cage. You have the body you dreamed of, but you don't truly own it. It's being rented, one weekly injection at a time. The fear of losing insurance coverage, of a supply shortage, or of simply being unable to afford the $2,000 monthly price tag becomes a constant, low-grade hum of terror in the back of your mind. Because everyone knows what happens when you stop. The studies are clear, and the anecdotal evidence is overwhelming. The weight comes back. And it comes back with a vengeance. The food noise returns, the appetite roars back to life, often stronger than before. And because you've lost muscle mass, your metabolism is slower, making it easier to gain weight and harder to lose it again. You are now fighting the same battle, but on a much harder difficulty setting. This reality transforms the drug from a tool of liberation into a lifelong leash. It's not a temporary fix. For most, it's a permanent dependency. And what about the very human experience of joy? One of the most common reports from users is a profound change in their relationship with food. It's not just that they're not hungry, it's that food itself becomes unappealing. The pleasure is gone. A favorite meal, a celebratory cake, a shared pizza with friends, these fundamental sources of comfort, culture, and connection become bland, uninteresting, or even nauseating. We are talking about the chemical silencing of one of humanity's oldest and most universal pleasures. For some, this is a welcome relief from the constant mental battle of cravings. But for others, it's a deeply unsettling loss. They feel a sense of anhedonia, an inability to experience pleasure, that extends from the dinner plate to other areas of their life. They've quieted the food noise in their head, but they may have also quieted the music. The ripple effects are already starting to reshape our world. Weight Watchers, the titan of the traditional diet industry, saw the writing on the wall, and in a stunning pivot, acquired a telehealth company to begin prescribing these very drugs themselves. If you can't beat them, join them. The fitness industry is scrambling, repositioning itself not as a tool for weight loss, but as a necessary supplement to the drugs, a way to combat the muscle loss they cause. Even Wall Street is buzzing, with analysts predicting that the success of GLP-1s could dent the profits of companies that sell snack foods, fast food, and even sleep apnea machines. We are witnessing a multi-trillion-dollar realignment of the global economy, all stemming from a single class of molecules. It's a testament to how deeply the issue of weight is woven into the fabric of our society, our economy, and our psyche. We thought we were just treating an individual's health problem, but we were wrong. We were launching a cultural, economic, and psychological revolution, and we have no idea where it's headed. We set out to conquer the body, but in the process we may be fundamentally altering what it means to be human, to feel hunger, to experience pleasure, to strive, to fail, and to overcome. We aimed for a simple solution, a shot to fix it all, but we've instead uncorked a universe of complexity that we are only just beginning to comprehend. And so we stand at a precipice, gazing into that universe of complexity, asking the fundamental question that follows any great disruption. Where do we go from here? This journey wasn't just about a medication. It was about the collision of a deeply human desire. The desire to be healthy, to be accepted, to feel in control of our own bodies, with a technology so powerful it feels like it was pulled from science fiction. We've seen lives transformed, decades of struggle seemingly erased in months. We've also seen the troubling side effects, the societal fractures, the dawning realization that silencing one biological signal, food noise, can amplify a host of others we never even knew were there. This isn't the end of the story. It's the beginning of an entirely new chapter in the human experience. The pharmaceutical pipeline is already churning out the sequel. If Ozempic and Mounjaro were the opening acts, the headliners are waiting in the wings. We're talking about next-generation drugs like retatrutide, a triple G agonist that targets 3 different hormone receptors involved in appetite and metabolism. Early trial data is staggering, showing potential weight loss of up to 25% of total body mass. Think about that. A quarter of a person's weight gone. These aren't just incremental improvements. They represent a continual leap forward in our ability to medically re-engineer the body's fundamental operating system. The question is no longer if we can create a pill or a shot to effectively end obesity. The science suggests we are already there. The real questions are now societal, ethical, and profoundly personal. What happens to a world where obesity, one of humanity's oldest and most stubborn medical challenges, becomes a largely treatable, manageable condition for those with access? On one hand, the potential public health benefits are astronomical. A dramatic reduction in type 2 diabetes, heart disease, stroke, certain cancers, sleep apnea, joint problems. The list of obesity-related comorbidities is long and devastating. The potential to extend lifespans and, more importantly, health spans. The number of years lived in good health is immense. Hospitals could see less strain, healthcare costs could plummet, and millions could be freed from chronic illness. This is the utopian vision, the one that drives the relentless innovation and the multi-billion-dollar market. But there's a shadow to this utopia. We are running the largest, most uncontrolled real-world clinical trial in history, and we have no idea what the long-term results will be. What are the consequences of suppressing the GLP-1 system for 20, 30, or 40 years? We're learning about the crucial role these receptors play not just in our gut, but in our brains, influencing mood, reward, and potentially addictive behaviors. Does a lifetime of blunting these pathways have unforeseen neurological consequences? What about nutrition? When your appetite is drastically reduced, it becomes incredibly difficult to consume the sheer volume of food required to get all your essential vitamins, minerals, and especially protein. The rise of Ozempic malnutrition is a real and growing concern. The risk of sarcopenia, the age-related loss of muscle mass and strength, could be accelerated dramatically, trading one health crisis for another down the line. We may be solving the problems of today by creating a whole new set of problems for tomorrow. And then there is the psychological fallout. We've built an entire culture around food. It's how we celebrate, how we mourn, how we connect. It's first dates and family holidays, business lunches and late-night comfort. What happens when the pleasure and desire associated with that is suddenly switched off? For many it's liberating, but for others it creates a void. The food noise they fought for so long was, in a strange way, a constant companion. Its absence can be disorienting, even alienating. It forces a confrontation with the self that was previously buffered by the cycle of craving and consumption. It begs the question: if you are no longer consumed by thinking about food, what do you think about instead? And are you prepared for the answer? This revolution also threatens to carve a deeper divide in our already fractured society. We are barreling towards a two-tiered system of health defined by access. On one side, you'll have those who can afford the $1,000+ a month, or who have the premium insurance that covers it. They will have access to a level of metabolic health and a body type that becomes the new medically assisted norm. On the other side will be everyone else. The stigma of being overweight, already a heavy burden, could become exponentially worse. It may no longer be seen as a complex medical condition, but as a choice, a personal failing to simply take the shot. The judgment could become unbearable, creating a new class of citizen, left behind by a biological upgrade they cannot afford. Perhaps the most profound change will be to our very concept of self and willpower. For centuries we've held up self-control, particularly around diet and exercise, as a primary virtue. It's the puritanical backbone of the American dream. Work hard, deny yourself, and you will be rewarded. These drugs demolish that entire framework. They prove, in stunning biological detail, that for many the battle was never a fair fight. It wasn't a lack of character, it was a matter of hormones, genetics, and brain chemistry. This is both a relief and a deeply unsettling revelation. It frees people from a lifetime of self-blame, but it also challenges our belief in human agency. If our appetites, and by extension our bodies, can be so easily controlled by an external chemical, what other parts of our identity are just biological puppets on a string? Ultimately, the shot is not the solution. It is a tool. An incredibly powerful, world-altering tool, but a tool nonetheless. It can quiet the biological storm enough for a person to finally learn how to swim, but it cannot swim for them. The real lasting work remains. The work of building a healthy relationship with food, not as an enemy or a temptation, but as nourishment and joy. The work of finding pleasure and stress relief in movement, in community, in purpose, not just in consumption. The work of untangling our self-worth from the number on a scale. This is the psychological and behavioral architecture that must be built, and no drug can do it for us. The shot can give you a new body, but it cannot give you a new life. That part is and always will be up to us. We are at the dawn of the age of metabolic medicine. We have cracked a code that governs one of our most basic drives. In doing so, we have given ourselves a new and awesome power. The power to decide what our bodies should be. But with that power comes a cascade of questions that will define this century. We wanted a cure for a disease, but what we've found is a technology that forces us to confront our own nature. It challenges our definitions of health, of beauty, of willpower, and even of what it means to be human. The story of the weight loss shot isn't about losing weight. It's about what we find when the hunger is gone.